tell us a little bit about some of the projects you've involved with and some of the really exciting moving and shaking that you've done in the business world and the Bible world and everything in between.
Yeah, I'm living a blessed life. I knew what I wanted to do when I was a kid. I grew up in the oil field with my grandfather. And my father was always an entrepreneur. He was an attorney, a construction attorney, always had his own law firm from when he was young. We got a lot of entrepreneurs in our family. And that was always rooted in, probably from my parents mainly and my grandparents, is two things, is work and faith. And they're intertwined. You've got to cultivate and work both of them. And I think you have to work your faith and have faith in your work. And so work and faith have been two attributes that I've learned by example from my parents, and then continue to do it and make sure I show it to my kids. From an oil and gas standpoint, started our first company in 2007. My wife and I did it at our kitchen table. I cashed in a Halliburton 401k from when I had been an employee at Halliburton. Got a couple extra credit cards and maxed them out and said, we can make 3 months, we can make 6. If we make 6, we can make 12. But then the Great Recession hit. Oil prices and natural gas prices tanked, but I had just enough capital to go buy some distressed assets. And we did. And, as things rebounded, we developed those assets, and then, ran that company just, bootstrapping it for 3 years, and then went and raised private equity with a group, Natural Gas Partners, in Dallas. And then really we're kind of off to the races of acquiring assets, developing assets, and selling them to the next larger player. So we've done that 3 times. We exited and sold a company in 2012, 2014. I took a little time off between 2014 and starting Hibernia 3 in 2017. I said, I got to reintroduce myself to my wife and my kids. Another motto of mine is faith, family, and friends. I was honored to join a trip of 9 other Jewish businessmen, mainly from Houston and some from Austin, Texas, last May. I was the token Christian and was proud to join that trip. Had an amazing trip there. I've always wanted to go to the Holy Land, and this was obviously a pretty shaky time, in May, but we did a lot focused on military, educational, and political, and then meeting a lot of investors that have been stuck or have not, hard to do your PowerPoint presentation for your investment deck when your bullets are going over your head. So we're able to meet a lot of men and women that have been serving and are still entrepreneurs, and develop really good friendships and made numerous investments in some of those discrete people since then. It's an amazing, just such a resilient attitude. Failure is not an option. It's pretty easy to invest in something when the people that are in, failure is not an option.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent in Israel, we have burned the boats. So we're kind of stuck on this island, and you have no other choice. In America, there are so many mid-level jobs where, okay, so if I'm not at this company, not at Halliburton, I'll go to ExxonMobil and I'll go to this one or that one. Once you go on your own, and you might have burnt the bridge or two as you're coming up. So people have to make these things work. And I do think that is part of the culture here, that we're not taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
And so speaking of which, how do you find that American businessmen and kind of your way of thinking about the world versus the Israeli culture, which in some ways is a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more in your face, a little bit more, a little less polite.
I've been blessed to do business with a lot of good Jewish friends since 2010, when I did my first deal with Natural Gas Partners, and a lot of the principals were Jewish, and stayed very good friends with them. And one gentleman in mind that had been really good friends with 2010 was on the trip, and he said, "Man, I've seen you sell stuff. I've seen you in presentations, and you're pretty good, but be careful. You're going to fall in love with some of these people, and they're going to blow you up." So I actually admired it. And it's not pushy. It's just staying in constant contact. I never felt hotbox or push, or just, hey, just want to touch base, want to see how it's going. It is a little bit more, say, in your face, but in a polite way. But again, when you burnt the boat and failure's not an option, I respected that. Sometimes you don't hear from people, but it was constant, but never like a pain in the neck. Oh God, so-and-so's calling back on this XYZ deal, and from Tel Aviv or whatever it was. But it is different. It is a little bit different, and we're pretty aggressive in the oil and gas business. We got to, especially now it's so competitive in West Texas. We're trying to stay in front. We're competing with people that got zeros on the end of their balance sheet. So we have to stay very active. I've probably learned that, just perseverance. Also being a serial entrepreneur, obviously I've had a lot of failures on me. I mentor a lot of young men and women from high school, deciding what they want to do, to to folks that have been out of school and in one career and mainly in the oil and gas industry. And man, I can't tell you what to do. I've got a long list of what not to do. So I've learned from my mistakes, and I think that's what I really like about the perseverance of the average Israeli entrepreneur is a lot more determined than the average U.S. entrepreneur.